Hey, what's up guys? This is Jedith, and this video is hopefully going to answer a lot of questions that you might have about when to use your cooldowns in the raid, Sepulchre of the First Ones. So a lot of people, ask, hey, when should I use meta on this boss? Or when should I use meta on this other boss? There's actually a website that you can go to called lorgs.io. I'll put a link to it in the description, so you can go there yourself and check it out. But this is basically what the homepage looks like here. It's just lorgs.io. So we'll just read what it says here. This website looks at the current top 50 logs for every spec and visualizes relevant spells on an encounter timeline. So I'll give you a quick example of what that looks like. We'll just go to, we'll go to Feral Druid. So it's going to look like this. It's very busy at first, but once I explain what you're looking at, it should be a little easier to understand. So up in the top right corner, you have tabs here where you can switch whatever spec you're looking at. You can toggle between mythic or heroic mode. Sometimes the cooldown usage might be different in the different difficulties of the boss. And then here you can select which boss you want to look at. So let's keep it simple. Let's go to Skolex and it'll load it here. And then, yeah, you can just look at the timeline. Again, these are like the top 50 logs for that fight and that spec. But let's head over to Havoc Demon Hunter because that's probably what you play. Okay, so Skolex is pretty straightforward. We're not going to see anything too crazy here, but we'll just go over it very quickly, right? So keep in mind, this is going to show you meta usage. Now, this is going to assume that you probably have your 4-piece. These are all the top 50 logs, so all of these people, I can guarantee you, they got this parse with their 4-piece tier set. And the 4-piece tier set does affect your cooldown on Metamorphosis. So keep that in mind. If you don't have your 4-piece yet, some of these might not apply to you. So up here, you can select what you want to see exactly, right? You can toggle like Netherwalk, maybe, if you want to see where people are using Netherwalk, or Blur. Blur is a really useful one to look at, because a lot of times people just don't press Blur in a raid fight, because they're not taking damage. They feel like they don't necessarily need it, or people will only use Blur in like a panic sort of situation, where you should be using Blur preemptively when you know you're about to take damage. So you can look at Blur, you can look at potions. Yeah, potions here, health pots, health stones. You can turn Sinful Brand on or off if you're curious about where people are branding. And yeah, then you'll have the timeline up here, across the top in the Skolex row. So you can see where his abilities are happening. So if you're looking at like Blur, for example, you can see, okay, Blur is happening around Ravening Burrow number 1. That's where most people are using Blur. And yeah, so on and so forth. So you can see meta usage here on Skolex is pretty straightforward. People are using it right at the very start of the fight. And again, towards the end, whenever it comes up. The variance here is likely because, like I said, people have their 4-piece. And this variance here is the variance in them spending Fury to get that cooldown back. So let's take a look at another boss. Let's look at, what's one that people ask about a lot? Lehuvim. Right, so nobody knows, hey, where am I supposed to use meta on Lehuvim? Because, the start of the fight isn't that important. People are saving their cooldowns to burst the big ad that comes out shortly after the initial pull. But you have to consider what you're working with here and what meta is as a cooldown. Meta is not a burst cooldown, right? It's basically for you as a Venthyr Demon Hunter, it's just to extend your brand and to give you more demonic uptime. So people are sending it right away at the start of Lehuvim, when you're just fighting Lehuvim himself. And then again, right around here, around 3:30. And then again, you'll see here some variants. People are getting it back up around here, but they're choosing to spend it here. or some of them are holding on to it for the very end of the fight. What I would suggest is looking along the timeline here, making sure that you understand where this is happening in the fight. Because it's not always like super easy to have a combat timer up and be looking at it and understand, okay, what is happening in the fight at 3:30. So you want to look up here on the top. You can mouse over these certain things and it'll tell you. So right around 3:30 is a recharge intermission, number 2, right? So another thing to consider is that because meta is such a long cooldown, like, 4 minutes naturally, but sometimes 3:30, sometimes a little less than that. You want to make sure that you have it up when you need it. So if that means using it at the very start of the pull, when nothing is really happening, and that gets you it later on, you want to do that. Or if you have to like hold it at a certain point, like you get it back up, but you don't want to send it right away because you're going to need it a little later on. That's something to consider as well. So let's take a look at another fight here. Anduin. So initially, people weren't using meta at the start of the Anduin fight, right? Because you wanted to have it up for the intermission. Well, now that you have your 4-piece, you can definitely just send meta at the start, then you'll have it up for about the intermission here, kind of like halfway through. And because you're getting it at the very end there, that seems less than ideal, right? Like right at the tail end of the intermission. But that does allow you to get it back up right in the middle of the second intermission, and that's where you want it. So, and yeah, so what you can do also, this is like, obviously I'm showing you Havoc Demon Hunter stuff, but if you have friends that play, other specs, classes, and they're not doing so well in raid, they're maybe not using their cooldowns properly, you can send them this site and help them figure out, hey, like if you're, I don't know, let's see, if you're an unholy DK, what do they play? Necrolord? There's only 2 unholy DK parses on this. Okay. Well, you could see like where they're using their cooldowns. They have what? What's their cooldown? Apocalypse? Army of the Dead? Where does that happen? Right there. Army of the Dead 1. So that's happening right in intermission. So they're not sending it right on pull. They're holding on to Army because obviously it's a super long cooldown and they're using it for the first intermission. This doesn't work super well with like healers, for example, because healer cooldowns are going to be assigned based on the need and your comp. So if you see people, using their cooldowns in one specific place, your raid leader might not want you to use like Tranquility there. They might need it at a different point. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't work the greatest for healers. Tanks, I mean, maybe, but this is mostly for DPS, I would say. I don't know what else has like very important cooldowns. You could, I don't know, Frost. What do they have here? There's only 2 Frost Mage parses on this. Cool. Anyways, you get the idea. You can go through this. I'm assuming most of my audience that are watching this video play Havoc, so we'll focus on that. And yeah, let's look at one more boss, but just before we go. Vigilant Guardian. That's, yeah, people ask about that one a lot. Do you meta right at the start? Do you hold on to it? Let's take a look. Okay, so this is a perfect example, right? You can see the fight timeline here starts at 0 seconds. So what this is telling us is that people aren't using meta on the first couple ads, right? They're holding on to it until about 30 seconds in when the big guy comes out. And they're metaing on top of the big guy and all the ads. And they're holding on to it for about 30 seconds, using it on the big guy. And then whenever it comes up again, it looks like. So something to keep in mind. Also, don't forget to look at blur usage. Super useful. Here it seems a bit like spread out, so I don't know if that's going to tell you much, but anyways, yeah, that's the site, guys, lorgs.io. I'll put a link to it in the description. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a like, sub to the YouTube channel, and there will be a lot more content coming very, very shortly. I am hoping that I can get alpha access to Dragonflight very soon, and the new mobile game, which kind of looks fun, I'm not gonna lie. So keep your eyes on the channel for that, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.